Title: Sister excluded me from the trip I funded, leading me to cancel her reservation and replace her. We're back with another subscriber email story, guys. If you want to submit your story, send it to Lessons from Life. Here, I'll put it on the screen. It's Lessons from Life. Whether it's a funny story, a success story, a story where you went through something, whatever it is, you probably have a story that someone else may have gone through, or they just went through it and they feel like they want to listen to your story. Hey, I made the right decision, or I need to make this decision because this seems like the right decision. People just need to hear that other people are going through it. It's good to know if someone else is going through something you're going through, and you can relate, and that will help you make the decisions you need to make. So feel free to submit those stories, and if you've already submitted them, please submit updates. I've been paying attention since I updated. I started updating at the beginning of December, and more stories are being included, as well as more stories being included. So please send those stories and send them to that email. But you've already read the title, so let's get to the content. I'm a 29-year-old male from a fairly tight-knit family. There are 3 of us siblings: me, my 26-year-old brother, and my 24-year-old sister, Bonnie. I get along well with my brother, but my relationship with Bonnie has always been somewhat strained. It's not that we don't get along, but she's always had a sense of entitlement. Growing up, our parents favored her a bit since she was the youngest. I tried to overlook it, but her behavior has often pushed my patience to its limits. My brother feels the same way, if not more, so whenever the two of them are together, conflicts are inevitable. Earlier this year, I received a substantial bonus at work, and with my parents' anniversary approaching, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to treat my family to a memorable vacation. It had been years since we all traveled together, and I wanted to celebrate our parents' anniversary in a special way. I organized a week-long trip to Hawaii, covering all expenses, flights, accommodation, activities, everything. Hawaii was the destination my parents chose for their honeymoon, so I couldn't think of a better place for them to relive those cherished memories. When I shared the trip idea with my parents, they were ecstatic. I knew they'd love it, especially because of the sentimental value of the location. I was confident my brother would appreciate the gesture too. My only concern was how Bonnie would react. It's hard to predict her mood. However, when the trip was announced, both my brother and Bonnie were excited. Bonnie, in particular, started talking nonstop about all the things she wanted to do and the Instagram stories she'd create. I was pleased to see her enthusiasm and felt happy that the whole family seemed thrilled. But that joy quickly soured when Bonnie began insisting on planning the vacation. I explained that since I was funding the trip, I wanted to handle all the arrangements myself. She threw tantrums, claiming I wasn't good at organizing things, and demanded that I let her take over the planning. This wasn't just a request, it was a demand. I had several reasons for wanting to manage the trip myself. First, it was my gift to the family. Second, I knew Bonnie's tendency to go overboard with extravagant choices when others are footing the bill. She'd booked the most expensive options without a second thought. I had carefully planned everything within my budget. For example, when someone treats her out, she orders the priciest items on the menu, but when it's her turn, she settles for something simple like Subway. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting that if I was busy, Bonnie could assist in planning some activities. I mentioned that some activities were meant to be surprises, but Bonnie insisted on knowing the details so she could prepare appropriate outfits. I assured her nothing would catch her off guard and had even included special surprises like a private luau and a snorkeling adventure to make the trip unforgettable. The weeks leading up to the trip were both exciting and exhausting. I went on a shopping spree with my brother while Bonnie was on her own shopping marathon. As the departure date neared, her constant nagging intensified. She was upset that I didn't let her plan and accused me of trying to overshadow her. Her behavior became so irritating that I decided to share the trip itinerary with her in hopes of appeasing her. She immediately called me, furious, and pointed out several changes she wanted to make to ensure everyone was comfortable. Her suggestions were reasonable, so I adjusted the schedule accordingly, which seemed to satisfy her. However, I realized that even minor issues during the trip could lead to her sarcastic remarks, so I decided to let her take full control. I gave her access to my account with strict instructions not to make significant changes without my approval. She agreed and promptly announced in the family group chat that she was now in charge of planning and had made some additions, like matching outfits for each day, which was a nice touch. Everything was going smoothly until a week before the trip when I discovered that Bonnie had canceled some of the activities I had booked and replaced them with her own preferences. She also claimed to have made executive decisions regarding the itinerary, insisting that everyone follow her lead. I was furious because this trip was meant to be my gift, and she had completely taken over. I tried calling her to discuss it, but she was adamant, stating that she was better at planning and that I should let her handle it. I stood my ground, refusing to back down, and accused her of sabotaging my plans. She retaliated by calling me controlling and ended the call. Later that night, my parents called me because Bonnie had informed them, and they wanted to understand what was happening. I explained the situation without revealing the surprise elements of the trip, hoping they would understand. To my surprise, they sided with Bonnie, believing that since she was so excited, I should let her have some control. They didn't realize she had completely overridden my efforts and finances. They emphasized that as a family, we should have a great time together in Hawaii, regardless of who was organizing it. Feeling unappreciated and frustrated, I considered canceling the entire trip out of anger, but decided to take a step back instead. I chose not to cancel but also stopped participating in the planning, thinking that if Bonnie wanted to be in charge so badly, I would just enjoy myself even if the trip wasn't as I had envisioned. However, things took a turn for the worse 2 days before our departure. I received a notification that my tickets had been successfully canceled. Shocked, I called the airline and was informed that the cancellation came from my account. It was no surprise it was Bonnie. When I confronted her, she acted as if nothing had happened. She admitted to canceling the tickets, laughing about it. Enraged, I demanded an explanation. She coldly stated that I was too controlling and negative, which would ruin the vacation for everyone. She claimed to have discussed this with the family, who agreed to exclude me from the trip. I couldn't believe that the trip I had paid for and organized was now happening without me. Bonnie had managed to convince everyone that I was the problem, and they all supported her decision. In that moment, something inside me broke. I refused to let her dominate the situation. I logged into my account, canceled her ticket, and rebooked it under my name, changing the account password to prevent her from making any further changes to the itinerary. I posted a message in the family group chat stating, "Since Bonnie has decided I'm not welcome on the trip I paid for, I've canceled her ticket. If anyone else wants to stay with her, I'm happy to cancel your tickets too." The reaction was immediate. My brother called me, saying he had no idea about Bonnie's actions. I explained the conversation I had with her, and he confirmed that Bonnie was making things up. He assured me that he had never agreed to exclude me and believed our parents would never ban me from the trip I was funding. It was a relief to know that at least he wasn't siding with Bonnie. Meanwhile, my parents were furious that I had canceled Bonnie's ticket. They accused me of being petty and vindictive, but I stood firm, explaining that I had planned and paid for the trip as a gift. If they didn't want me there, I could go alone, but I wasn't going to sacrifice myself for charity. They confirmed that they never asked Bonnie to cancel my tickets, but were also unhappy that I had canceled hers. They wanted all of us to go together, but I wasn't going to let her control my generosity. Bonnie, understandably, was livid and sent me a flood of angry texts, calling me every name imaginable. I forwarded these texts to my parents to show them what Bonnie was up to. My dad then offered to mediate, suggesting that Bonnie should apologize and that I should rebook her ticket so we could all vacation together. Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing deep down that Bonnie would never apologize. During the conference call, Bonnie refused to apologize, insisting she did the right thing. Eventually, Dad ended the call, feeling torn between his children. I expressed to him how cruel Bonnie was, but he remained conflicted. I knew I had made the right decision, but it saddened me that the trip wouldn't be the same. Fast forward to departure day. At the airport, I met up with my family. Only my brother was visibly excited, while my parents were still upset but had accepted that Bonnie wouldn't be joining us. Boarding the plane was tense, and I could see the disappointment in my parents' eyes. Once in Hawaii, I executed my plans meticulously, ensuring everyone had a fantastic time. We enjoyed the private luau, snorkeling adventures, and even a helicopter tour over the island. Despite the initial tension, we began to relax and savor the experience. My parents gradually embraced the trip, appreciating the effort I had put into making it memorable, even without Bonnie. Throughout the week, I received occasional messages from Bonnie filled with anger and accusations. My parents occasionally checked in with her, but they started to realize her behavior was unreasonable. We returned home with wonderful memories, having shared incredible experiences in Hawaii. My parents were still disappointed that Bonnie wasn't there, but they valued the effort I had made. Bonnie, on the other hand, had blocked me on social media. She was angry with our parents for siding with me over her and declared that she never wanted to see me again. She called my brother derogatory names for supporting me and informed our parents that she couldn't live with them anymore, even though she still lived in their house. It was painful, but I knew I had done what was necessary. I don't regret standing up for myself and setting boundaries, though I wish things had turned out differently. Maybe someday Bonnie will realize her mistakes and we can repair our relationship. Until then, I cherish the memories of our amazing trip. Thanks for reading. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Let's take a moment to appreciate the irony. Bonnie, who can't plan a decent meal without overspending, attempted to hijack a carefully planned trip. Her idea of organizing probably involves endless Instagram scrolling and booking things based on likes, whereas your meticulous planning ensured a smooth vacation. Your parents, likely accustomed to Bonnie's antics, couldn't see her entitlement hindering the trip. It's almost amusing how she thought proposing Mexico as an alternative was a viable option, while you ensured Hawaii was a perfect family getaway. If Bonnie wants to play games, she should expect some pushback. Update 1. The situation between Bonnie and me worsened after she was excluded from the trip. She tried to manipulate my brother into co-sponsoring the vacation, hoping to get him on her side to abandon me. My brother laughed at her proposal, questioning if she had the means to cover half the trip costs. Bonnie admitted she didn't but promised to pay him back eventually. My brother was skeptical, knowing her unreliable work ethic and frequent absences from her job. He asked if she was serious, and she suggested if Hawaii was too much, they could go to Mexico instead. My brother dismissed the idea, pointing out the absurdity of trading a Hawaiian paradise for a Bonnie-funded trip to Mexico, where he'd end up as her unpaid photographer. Bonnie continued to guilt-trip our parents about excluding her from the family vacation. Fortunately, my parents stood their ground, insisting that she apologize before joining us. Bonnie refused, maintaining that she did the right thing by excluding me. Her parents tried to mediate, but Bonnie remained unrepentant. Update 2. A few months after the trip, I returned to work and hadn't kept up with the situation at home. I later discovered that Bonnie had finally been evicted from our parents' house. Initially, she had been asked to pay rent a year ago, which she only did sporadically, often coming up with excuses not to pay. After our trip, she continued to misuse our parents' hospitality, staying over frequently and not contributing. Eventually, my parents confronted her about her unpaid rent and irresponsible behavior. Despite her attempts to manipulate them with emotional pleas, they decided to let her move out permanently. She even tried to borrow money from my brother, who refused to help, recognizing her pattern of deceit. My parents had enough of her freeloading and manipulative tactics, finally enforcing boundaries to encourage her to become self-reliant. Conclusion. Bonnie's entitled behavior reached new heights, but ultimately, my parents recognized the need to prioritize their own well-being and that of the family. While it was a tough love approach, it was necessary to end her cycle of dependency and manipulation. I remain hopeful that Bonnie will one day acknowledge her faults and work towards rebuilding our relationship, but for now, the memories of our Hawaiian adventure stand as a testament to the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for oneself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. It's both hilarious and frustrating how Bonnie tried to take over a thoughtfully planned trip. Her backup plan of Mexico was pure comedy, as no one would trade a Hawaiian paradise for a poorly funded escapade. Your parents' eventual realization of Bonnie's toxicity is commendable, even if it took a lot of drama to get there. Let us know your experiences with similar family conflicts. Thank you for joining us for Lessons from Life today. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss our next story. See you again in the next story.